Hello and welcome to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., your host, and I am here with a very, very friend, sister, co-host, the one and only Pam Perry. Pam.
Hey, how are you, Alfred? Oh my goodness, I'm so
excited. Better now that I know that you're here.
Oh, this is going to be good. It's so exciting to be with you. We've known each other for decades.
Oh yeah. And look how good we look. Look,
it's the water.
Decades well. Listen, I know you're here every year. We got a special guest, but in the next 20 seconds, tell me what you're up to. How things been going? What's going on?
Everything is going really well. Speakers, years ago, people didn't want to speak. They only wanted to write books. Now everybody wants to speak. So I just did a Speak, Sell, Shine, an event at the Howard Theater. It was fabulous. So really helping the speakers get out there and get known.
Well, as the publisher of Speakers Magazine, you guys need to pay attention to that. Anybody who's in the speaking business or wants to be in it, you definitely need to know about Speakers Magazine. She's definitely championing all of us in the marketplace. So you definitely want to check that out. But Pam, our guest today, his business, his success dovetails with all of ours. And of course, music is a ministry, radio is a ministry. These are all ministry platforms. Pam, I'm excited because we both work on platforms that deal with the intersection of public speaking, live events, media, radio. And today's guest, David C. Linton, chairman of the Living Legends Foundation, will be joining us today. So I know you're excited.
I am.
Well, let's get going. You're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., with our special co-host, Pam Perry. Pam, I'm really excited because we're talking about living legends, and you guys, we both have seen and covered and met many of the people who are really such huge contributors to the forward movement of our society, forward movement of our nation, forward movement of arts, culture, media. You've gotten a chance to work with many of them in your role as a first level PR executive and the publisher of Speakers Magazine. What are you thinking about when you think about living legends right now?
I mean, so I'm in Motown. I'm from Detroit. I'm a Motown girl. So Stevie Wonder just had his tour. He's still doing his tour, right? So Stevie Wonder is definitely a living legend. But I want to give a shout out, definitely for sure. We just lost Quincy Jones. I mean, this whole weekend was like, how much music did this man produce? It was like he was influencing everyone. And, from Detroit, one of my favorites, obviously Diana Ross, that kind of thing. Smokey Robinson is still doing his thing. I'm like, what? So our music,
whatever Smokey's doing, I need to find out. That's all I got. I need to do whatever he's doing.
Yes. At almost 85 years old and still looking good. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Yes, that is it. And Quincy Jones and also Frankie Beverly. I mean, we just, they went on the Ancestors and joined the Ancestors, and it's just really like you don't realize the impact of their music that it has on our culture, on our lives. I mean, they're just, when people say it's a soundtrack of your life, it really is. You listen to any Quincy Jones songs, from something as simple as like a theme song from Sanford and Son to Michael Jackson. It's like he was there. So yeah, this is going to be good. And radio brought it to the forefront. So we wouldn't know it if we didn't have radio, right? Before all this Spotify and iTunes and all that kind of stuff, right? So
yeah, it's funny, on Instagram now you can take snippets of music and put it on your stories or your reels. And I'm always fascinated by the degree to which people don't even necessarily understand the music history and the legacy in those clips that they're sharing to support their TikToks or whatever. But I'm glad to see that it's living on in a certain platform. Because what we're talking about, which is key to our show, is legacy, and legacy is a major function of ministry. It's the mark you leave behind. It's contributions that you make that better people's lives long past your natural life. And so today's guest really is a champion of capturing and preserving legacy for future generations. Please welcome to the show David C. Linton, who's the chairman of the Living Legends Foundation, music executive extraordinaire, radio executive extraordinaire. Please welcome to the show, David Linton.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
David, you heard us talking about this idea of legacy. You're the chairman of the Living Legends Foundation. But before we jump into that, talk a little bit about your journey to becoming who you are today.
Well, for me, it started growing up as a kid, just listening to the radio. I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn.
Best I do or die. Okay. But I grew up listening to great black radio. WWRL, WBLS, Frankie Crocker, Hank Spann. Those were the guys, and Alma John, who was the Martha Stewart before Martha Stewart. And we were able to hear those things, but then while I matriculated from Brooklyn Tech High School, went to Shaw University, HBCU, got my undergraduate degree in broadcast communications, radio, TV, and film.
Okay. Got
my master's in media marketing, instructional media from North Carolina Central University. But for me, it was at WSHA, which was my college radio station there. And the unique thing about WSHA, which unfortunately no longer exists, it was the first Black FM radio station in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I just got to train there and excelled there as a student. And when I graduated, 6 months after graduation, I was tapped to become program director and actually shaped that station. And that station had a lot of influence. That's how I met the producer of Be Lifted Up, Gwen Franklin. She's like a big sister to me, and we developed a bond. Of course, she came to promote a record, but out of that came a friendship that has lasted forever. And so we continued to, and I moved on from radio. I went to Elizabeth City State University, where I started the communications department there and a radio station, launched that, WRVS. And then I kept bugging people, and I finally got an opportunity to go to work at the record company. And I started as a regional rep at Warner Brothers Records in Dallas, and fast forwarded, moved to several labels, Polygram as the vice president, Arista Records working under Clive Davis. And my last label job, I was senior vice president of promotion and marketing at Capitol Records. So that's the elevator pitch about me and how I got to this platform today.
And that's a fantastic journey. It's amazing. In many ways, like I said, what all three of us do is related, even though, I'm a business and financial journalist, but I got my first radio experience was at WRSU Radio as a student. But it was a PWI, obviously university, but it was a Black show called Black Expressions, because you might have noticed I got what they call a radio voice, and they were like, "You need to be on our show," and I was like, "I'm not in radio." It didn't matter. Fast forward, we already talked about Brooklyn and New York's legacy. We've talked about Detroit. My favorite city is Chicago, even though I was born and raised in the New York metro area, and so WVON in Chicago. And I used to host a show called Urban Business Roundtable. And of course, we know the musical legacy of Chicago, the Shy Lights, the Dells. We can go on and on and on. But it's just amazing to me how those things intertwine. Pam, as you said it, radio, Black radio in particular, is a cultural phenomenon that really created a firm, fertile ground for the living legends that we'll be talking about.
One of the legends from Detroit was Martha Jean the Queen. So I had an opportunity to work with Martha Jean the Queen. And I worked at Wayne State. I worked at the radio station there, and I worked at the public radio station. I didn't really like news as much as I liked the promotions. And the Queen brought me in to do the promotions. And, she's, besides being on the air, she was a big promoter. And I consider her one of my mentors. So she was Martha Jean the Queen. She was the the icon. She was Oprah before there was Oprah in Detroit. Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
I had the opportunity to meet her at one of our many conventions called Jack the Rapper in Atlanta. So I got a chance to meet Martha Queen. So you got great pedigree, as they say.
Yes, yes. She was everything. She was
Yes,
everything.
yes, for sure.
So listen, real quick, David, give a quick summary and then we'll go deeper into it during the course of the show. What is the Living Legends Foundation?
Well, the Living Legends Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It was started in 1991 by Ray Harris, who was then Senior Vice President of Black Music at Warner Brothers, as well as Jerry Bolden, one of the first national program director and radio consultants, who was at the time head of the Urban Network. But we found out that this is an industry that's not kind to you. And it's not the kind of industry that allows you to work 30 years, get the gold watch, and ride off into the sunset. And we found out that there was a need for people who, when they were out of work, to have a bridge over troubled waters. They couldn't pay rent, they couldn't do, those things. And so it really started out, it's just simply as a need to help our brothers and sisters when they were in distress. And we focused on the people behind the scenes. Everybody knows the stars, but nobody knows the star makers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our focus in terms of the legends that we really support. And then one day it was like, we need to create an organization. So they formed this organization, and 35 years later, or 33 years later, we still are here. I've been with the foundation in its entirety because my boss started it, so I had no choice. It was called Job Security, but I learned and loved the labor of doing it. And we just lost Quincy Jones, who was an artist at Warner Brothers, and he lent his name to the foundation. He was one of the first honorees, and that sort of catapulted us to continue to move forward and last these 33 plus years.
Well, that's the perfect setup. You're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. with our guest host, Pam Perry, and we're here with David C. Linton of the Living Legends Foundation. Stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio. I'm your co-host, Pam Perry, and we are here with our guest, David Linton. And we are talking about the industry of music. We all love the entertainment industry, radio, broadcasting, all the stars that we see every day. But then there's a whole cadre of people that are behind the scenes that also make the stars look good. And so David is part of that group, and he has a nonprofit that he's telling us about today. So tell us a little bit more about why you said, well, this industry isn't really kind. So tell us a little bit about why it was started. Like, what was the real purpose? Was it discrimination way back then, 30 something years ago? What was going on during the time when it was started?
Well, during that time in history in 1991, Black music was so strong that it created a multi-million-dollar industry inside of $1 billion industry. We had several Black profit centers, senior vice presidents who created, put together teams. We had a whole ecosystem where Black music, and it kind of started because in my mind's eye, rock and roll was supposed to be king. So, but they had to hire these Black people to promote Black music, because back before my time, the radio stations said we wanted to talk to somebody Black, and so companies started hiring Black executives. And if you know anything about, do some research and find out about the Harvard Report, gives you a little bit more of a detail on how that ecosystem really grew. But what happens is that, like I said, a job in the music industry is almost like being an athlete. You have a short window to maybe make a lifetime of money, or sometimes you don't even get that, depending on your level of expertise. I was blessed. I became a senior vice president. So, there was a few more zeros. But the average person has just a regular job, and you're an at-will employee. And so when people got out of work, and if they didn't get picked up, they still had to pay mortgages. They still had kids to go to school. So we were a very compassionate, and still are a very compassionate community where we try to help each other. And so when we had when we had about 10, 15 Black executives who were head of different labels, if I needed something, I would say, hey, Alfred, Pam's out of work. Can you send me $5,000 or $2,000? And they would do it. And you can do that, and you multiply that. And Pam was good for 6, 7 months. But then we realized that became kind of expensive. And so let's create something. So Ray Harris and Jerry Bolden created the Living Legends Foundation. We started having a dinner. First, it was the luncheon inside of a convention, so that we can come in and we would honor people, raise money, and the money that we raised would be put aside as a rainy day fund, if you will. Mm-hmm. And when people needed assistance, we provided that. And so we did that for a number of years, but then the industry shifted, downsizing, 9/11, Napster technology.
The digitization of music.
Industry started imploding. I have my own theory, is that one day they woke up and saw that there was all this money being created by Black executives and Black artists, and we have to get in control of it. And I think there was a systematic approach to the downsizing and eliminating the Black music division. As we all know now, the whole industry has contracted, so now there's 2 major record companies when there used to be like maybe 7 or 8. So we continued to grow, and we continued to do that because, one, we needed to still help people, but then we realized we have to tell our story. We have to preserve our legacy, because if we don't do it, who will? And so the foundation began to not only honor people, but also documenting their history. And so our 3 pillars of the foundation is really service, which is when we help people, scholarship, because now we provide scholarships to students who want to pursue careers in the industry in non-performing roles behind the scenes. We want to groom executives. And then, of course, there's legacy building. So we tell the story, we honor these men and women while they're alive. That's why we're the living legends. We give them their flowers while they're alive, so we can celebrate them and their families can help celebrate them. Because I was in the business for like 30 years, and all my parents, they really didn't understand what I did, to be very honest. After they got over the shock of saying, because my mother said, I'm not sending you to college to be no disc jockey. What are you doing? But again, so we have now, we have this foundation, and we have honored over hundreds of people. We've given close to $500,000 or more away over the years to people, helping people stay in their homes. Everything from helping when they have tax problems, staying in their homes, medical, because most people don't have insurance, and insurance, we're all one medical situation away from bankruptcy.
Yes.
So we help people with that. And then, of course, now, like I said, we're now supplying students with scholarships so that we can start to groom the next generation of music executives. And we also provide mentorship for those who are actually at the labels now, because there are there are executives there now, they really don't have the same kind of flexibility or the power or the illusion of power that we had during my time. And so it's very important. So we're trying to be a little bit of everything, but our three pillars: service, scholarship, legacy preservation. That's what we're about.
The theme of this show is living, an abundant life, or your guide to living an abundant life. And obviously that speaks to, faith and finance. And so much of what you talked about in terms of, like you said, your earning power over time, and the importance of retirement funds and insurance and things like that, that those of us looking outside, again, we're looking at the stars, we're looking at the big numbers of record sales, and we're thinking, oh, if you're in that industry, you're set. As you're evolving in the service or the services that the organization provides, how much education now are you giving to people coming into the industry so they understand the realities coming in?
That's what we really try to do. We try to help the the executives now to understand that. And we also did that when we were executives. I used to have this thing. I'd bring my artists, and I've worked with some of the biggest artists on the planet. You know, I've been involved in projects, and I have over $100 million worth of 100 million units sold, from everybody from Whitney Houston to TLC, Usher, Prince. But I used to take artists and I used to bring them into my office, and I say, inside here, I'm David, your brother. Out there, I got to be the company guy. But I'm gonna tell you some things in here for you just to know. But if I hear it out there, then I know I can't really trust you, okay? Because I'm telling you this for your own good. Because there's one word that we have to do: recoup. Everything you get is a loan. I told artists, you always have to look at your record deal as a high interest credit card.
That's
And
good.
you're going to get, they're going to give you as much. You can get as many cash advances as you want, but you got to pay it back before you see a penny, because it's calling recouping. So we try to do that with our artists. We do that now, even with the young executives. I've always said, and I've learned, you pay yourself before you pay anybody else. Now, I don't know if anybody's listening, and I don't get into religion, but for me, it's I tithe, pay myself, take care of my bills. Those are my personally, and we try to instill that in our artists and in these young executives, because you could be riding around today and have a six-figure job, and tomorrow you don't have anything, and so you have to learn to live below your means, and you have to know how to invest. And those are the things that we try to share with the artists when we were executives, and what we try to share now with the current executives that we get to mentor.
Well, let me tell you, David, you're in the right space to talk about tithing first, paying yourself second, and then and then obviously paying your bills, living within your means. And one of the best benefits of tithing is that if you tithe, you have to live within your means. You learn to live within your means because of that discipline that tithing brings. But listen, I want you to hold on to that thought. This is Alfred Edmond Jr. with our guest host Pam Perry and our special guest David C. Linton. You're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. We are talking about the realities, financial and otherwise, of pursuing a career in the music and radio industry. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Pam Perry. We're back with Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. And we're here with David Linton, talking about the music industry, the entertainment industry, the radio industry, all those glamour type of jobs that people kind of envy and want. But kind of tell us a little bit, David, about what are those jobs behind the scenes? I know there's marketing and there's promotion. And when students or people are studying that and broadcasting in school, like you said, you had the degrees and that kind of thing. What kind of jobs are people really going for now when they come out of school? Obviously, the record industry isn't as big as it used to be. So where are really the main areas where you're seeing a lot of management, especially Black managers, going into?
Well, you still have, inside the labels, you still have a need for promotions. That is the idea of putting a project together. A product is created, and then there has to be a marketing plan. How do you get it? Who's the target audience? How do you reach them? And the means. So you still need that marketing person. You still need that promotions person. We don't do as much artist development, especially with hip hop. But
Okay.
artist development is something because we try to teach artists how to speak to the press,
Okay.
what to say, media training, because at some point in time, hopefully you're going to get them. Back in the day, when I was at Arista working under Clive Davis, we wanted to break a record. He had a relationship with Oprah. We get him on Oprah, we know, but you got to go on Oprah. You got to know how to talk. You can't just sing, right? So there's media training, um, podcasting. People don't say they're not as interested in radio, but there's still you still need those interviewing skills. So even if you're going to do a podcast, you still have to know who your target market is. So, marketing, publicity, you still need somebody to write that press report and somebody to get to Pam Perry PR so that who's going to tell that story? Because artists used to always come into my office when they got the big head and they say, you see what Billboard said about me, da da da. And one day I had to tell one artist, I had to go into my drawer and pulled out the draft. I said, they're saying that because we told them to say it.
We're the wizard.
Yeah, exactly. So we're the wizard, exactly. But those are the jobs that are still there. They're not as plentiful because there's not as many. But you still need those skill sets. Finance, law, legal.
Oh,
Oh
my God. I'm
the-
sure they're really busy.
yeah. So you can still have those skill sets. Everybody's not going to be as fortunate as say LeBron or someone who brought their boy from the hood who took care of their business, and it's a success story. I've seen a lot of artists come in. Well, this is my boy. Or my girl. This is my ride or die. But they didn't pass math. they don't understand this contract. And artists would get upset when they would see, hey, I'm not getting, I'm paid on I sold $1 million and I'm only getting this. And even now today, especially with the streaming, at least in the day of the physical CD, you could sort of count. One CD, you get so much percentage off of one CD, but with the streaming, it's like, it's in the air. It's like, so there's nothing you're really touching. And I think that's also has affected, my personal feeling is there's not as much emotional attachment to the music as it was when we were coming up, because you went to the store and you touched it, you feel it, then there's an emotional attachment. But those are the jobs that are still there. And there's some other social media, you need somebody to run your social media platform. So there you still have those same jobs. You still have jobs. They may be different, but you still need the same skill sets. You still need to know how to read. You still know how to write. You still need to know how to count. you need to know, and you need to know the business of music. And that's what we try to infer, because even in my coming up, I grew up wanting to be on the radio. And then I learned that there's a position called the program director. He was in charge of all the DJs. I said, well, that's the job I want. So I've always focused on the business side. I mean, I can't sing, but God blessed me with a ear so I can hear a hit. Yeah. And I also know I try to stay in touch with what the public wants. And so that's how you develop those campaigns. And those campaigns are still important. So, and the Living Legends Foundation is comprised of the men and women who did all those things. Our board consists of people who were in the business, who are out of the business, and some who are still in the business. So we have a nice mixture of intergenerational people who create our foundation through our advisory board, our board of directors, and our officers.
Mm-hmm. So the program director job is something that you still do?
Yes, I'm currently, you come full circle. I'm now program director of Jazz 91, the jazz station owned by Clark Atlanta University.
That's a full circle moment.
Yeah, so it allows me now to take all of the experience that I've learned from my days at Shaw, transferring to commercial radio, the record industry, and now bring it back and try to influence this next generation, but with some practical nuances and some real life experiences. So when they have that pipe dream, I at least kind of direct them on what it's really like. And I was really blessed even while I was going at Shaw, because I came in contact with people like Gwen Franklin and Ernie Singleton. Those people came to our school, showed us, and I was able to develop relationships. And that's the thing we always teach people. This is a relationship business.
Yes.
You know, I always say, who you know may help you get there, but what you know will keep you there. So you got to have both ends covered.
You know, I'm well known as a very passionate mentor to both entrepreneurs and professionals across a variety of industries. And you this thing about relationships, who you know, what you know, and I would say, and what do they think about you?
That's so
Because
true.
you know them and they know you, but they don't know you in a good way. You know, this whole idea of relationship management, image management, reputation management is even more important in the age of social media and digital, when one wrong tweet, when one wrong post can create a whole narrative about you that may not even be true, but will have a negative effect on your life and your career and your business. But I know this is going. Our time with our guests goes by so fast because the work that you're doing is fascinating. But I want to kind of set up our next and final segment. I really do want to get into the bridge you've built between the past, the lessons that you learned and your colleagues, the future, the new people who are coming in the industry, and this idea that you said about giving people their flowers while they're alive, upholding these living legends as inspirations and icons and examples. As we come down the home stretch of our conversation. Yes, you mentioned earlier our very own Gwen Franklin was recognized as a living legend, and we love to hear that because she deserves all the flowers. But I really do want to kind of jump into this idea that part of making things better in our industry and in our world is upholding the best examples and their stories and their lessons and their successes and their setbacks as a way to help future generations not only navigate it more successfully, but actually make it better. As you said, things are changing so rapidly that I tell people a lot of things I learned in the first 20 years of my career don't even apply anymore. So I've had to stay in constant learning mode to be able to continue to make a difference going forward and stay relevant. So listen, you're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. I'm here with my special guest host, Pam Perry, and we're both having a fascinating conversation with David C. Linton, chairman of the Living Legends Foundation. Again, radio, music industry, veteran, pro, extraordinaire, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. here with the wonderful Pam Perry, and we are here with David C. Linton, chairman of the Living Legends Foundation. So listen, David, I wrapped up the last segment talking about the importance of showcasing the best of us. At our recent event, Black Men Excel, that we do for Black Enterprise, we call it celebrating the best of who we are. And being able to hold that as a standard of excellence for those coming behind them. So talk more about, the importance of that recognition. I love the idea that, we have halls of fame and there's nothing wrong with a posthumous recognition, but the really impactful recognitions is when the people are still alive, still making contributions, still bringing other people along, still setting the standard. So talk a little bit more about the importance of that initiative as part of the organization.
Well, that's really important. I mean, we honor people, and by honoring them, they graciously allow us to raise money off of them. Our gala is our big fundraiser where we raise the money to do the philanthropic work we do, as well as we have a golf tournament that we hold in Atlanta every year in April. So those are our two fundraisers, because everybody on the foundation volunteers their time. Nobody gets paid. So whatever comes in goes out to support those initiatives. But we've also created some vehicles because the industry has changed, and as some of the things that I learned don't apply anymore because the vehicles aren't there and the industry's not as big, and it's always evolving and it's always learning. So we've created. It's important you got to know your history to know where you're going. So part of us honoring these legends in real time, and a legend to us doesn't mean how long you've been doing something.
Right.
A legend is what you did when you had the opportunity.
Okay.
We've had legends who are 40 years old because they've been put in positions and they changed the trajectory of somebody's life, the career, or they created a new dimension. So we now honor people in social media work. We honor people. We have an advocacy, attorneys. We've created some. We have an award named after Mike Bernardo, who was one of the first women who was an executive. So we find, and there's a Lifetime Achievement Award, and then I have my Chairman's Award that I give, that I get to pick someone. So
it's not just about, as we said, what we say at Black Enterprise, my other life. It's not about tenure, it's about impact.
Exactly. And that's, sometimes people go, well, I'm not a legend, I haven't been around that long. No, it's not about that. There's people who've been in jobs for a long time and that's all they did was have a job. But you could be in a job for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years and have a lifelong impact. And those are the things that we look at. We created a podcast called Music Day, where people can go in and we attack some of the issues that are facing our industry today. We dealt with AI before it became a buzzword. We did tributes. We talked about jazz, the intersection of jazz and hip hop. Speaking about Quincy again, I mean, one of the highlights of my career was being in a room with him with a bunch of rappers, and he drawing that line between bebop to hip hop. I wish we had phones back then. I could have recorded it. We didn't have that at that time. So we do that so people can always find out too about us going on our website, livinglegendsfoundation.com. We have all of these. We have some of the testimonials from some of the people that we've assisted, because when we assist people, we do it with anonymously. We don't broadcast who we help. We just helped it. Wow. But people have felt the need to just say, hey, if it hadn't been for the foundation, I would have been X, Y, and Z. So they've given us some testimonials. And then of course we have a segment that we started, I Want to Know. People who are aspiring to be in the industry. They ask questions, and some of our people will answer some of those questions. So we're trying to come up with different ways to impact people. It's not just once a year when we have our event, but throughout the year, we're doing things. We have Black Music Month campaigns, History Women campaigns, jazz. I work now at a jazz station, and one thing that we didn't know is that there was never a jazz award. So my general manager, Wendy F. Williams, and our team put together the first Jazz Music Awards on the same caliber of the American Music Awards, or Grammys.
Wow.
And one of the honorees that we gave this year was Harvey Mason, who was the head of the Academy. And we've had conversations about how jazz, which is an original American art form,
yes,
which is our music.
Yes.
We don't actually control it like we used to, but that's another story. That's another subject for another day. So again, what we're doing is there. We're doing a lot of things. People can follow us on social media, on Instagram at the THELLF Inc. We're also on Facebook on the Living Legends Foundation. So we're on social media. You can follow us. But the podcast that we created was really designed to connect the dots and have dialogue. So we could.
What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Music Day, a verified hit.
Okay.
And it's on. We have a YouTube channel as well. If you go to YouTube channel and look for Music Day or the Living Legends Foundation, it'll pop up. As well as some of the biographical videos of our honorees, because it's important to tell those stories. So we also have a space in the African American Music Museum in Nashville. So, because we were one of the first places that they were able to come and talk about the fact that they were even wanting to build. So every year we gave them a platform so they could tell the industry, help raise money for the museum. So if you're ever in Nashville, you got to go by the museum. It's a great piece. And we have a little segment. Some of our founders are there. You talked about Motown, Pam. Miller London is on our board, one of our founding members of our board, who was the first salesperson who worked closely with Berry Gordy. So that history
is important.
Is there. So we have everything from, go all the way back to the present day. And again, like I said, everybody on our board has touched the musical landscape, and they are the driving force behind everything that's happened from the 1960s up until last week.
There was an organization called Black Women in Radio, and I don't know if they have a museum yet, but that is one of the I think her name was Felicia Love.
Yeah, and, Felicia, yes.
Yeah, and so one of the things, again, is preserving history, really talking about not necessarily the people that are in the front, but people in the back. Like you said, the salespeople that were behind the scenes. Those are people that definitely that are still doing the work, but nobody sees them. And so by having those awards and recognizing them is really, really unique. There was an organization called BART, Blacks in Advertising, Radio and Television, would really recognize those that were advertising promotion that worked in the radio and television industry. Not the people on the air, not people on the camera, but those are the kind of things that really is important to bring in more people, because there's so many spots out front. And it's a whole multi-million-dollar industry behind the scenes as well. So that's really important to educate people as well about those. And I'm sure you're doing that at WCLK.
Yeah, like I always say, there's one microphone, but there's 40 people behind to get that person to the microphone.
Yes, yes.
We've had Black Women in Radio as guests on the show, Felicia Love and others as well, for the same reason. That here's the reason what connects the dots for this show, the Black Women in Radio, when we have Felicia on, Love on, and it goes back to the point that was made earlier. Impact is what real ministry is. It's not tenure. It's not I'm in a church, or Pam has had such impact in so many different ways on so many different people's lives that don't fit the traditional strict definition of ministry. But I tell people all the time, ministry is positive impact on the lives of others. And so you're right. It's not about I've been at this for 50 years. If you've been at it for 2 years, but those 2 years made a huge difference in the lives of other people, that's impact. That's effective ministry. And so, I mean, there's no doubt. I'm just so glad that we're giving shine to the Living Legends Foundation. It's such important work. We've all heard the stories of artists and professionals in the industry that you thought maybe at one time they were balling out, they were doing great, but we don't necessarily pay attention to the fact that it's a glamorous industry, but the glam doesn't pay the bills in the future if you're not careful. So listen, David, we are just so glad you joined us here on Be Lifted Up Radio. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We definitely want to, stay in touch with you. We may have to bring you back, talk about the Jazz Awards, talk about some of the other stuff that you're doing. And you're right, you could do a whole nother show on jazz and the gift that it is as an American art form, but to the degree to which we don't necessarily control it or appreciate it as the creators of that art form. But listen, all that said, thank you for being our guest on Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I wouldn't be able to do any of this without my great board and officers. I have a great support. I'm just a face. They do the work.
All right. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. Pam, what a great episode of Be Lifted Up Radio. David C. Linton and the Living Legends Foundation really took us to school. What say you?
Oh my God. He was, people always say, oh, you really can't. He talked about his parents. He says, we're not sending you to college to be a DJ. And like 30, 40 years later, he's still in the industry, and it has changed dramatically. But what's so important is that he has made impact. He is doing philanthropy work within that industry. He is teaching other people. He is honoring the legends, living legends. I mean, so he's doing all the things. He's doing God's purpose in that really entertainment radio industry where people say, oh, you're just going to do that for fun. No, he's doing it as his life's work, as his calling. So I got out of that even though it has been changed, he's been with it, he's been riding with it, and really making a difference with it.
Yeah, I share your sentiment. This idea that you can make a difference in whatever your career, your passion, calling is. It's not about what you do, it's about why you do it and who you do it for. And if you got those things in the right spaces, everything else will fall into place. God will lead us where he needs us to go, and we will know to do what we need to do when we get there. And that's it. He's just a wonderful example of that without even necessarily trying to be that. He's just, it's there in his heart and in his spirit.
It is. And it was full circle for him. I mean, he started out, he said he was 6 months after he graduated, he was a program director at HBCU. And
now he's, right?
He's at HBCU as a program director. Probably,
wow.
I'm sure in terms of like they were slicing tape back then and where he is right now, but he's still doing it and still making impact. I just thought that was amazing. It was amazing. He needs an award.
Excellent point. Yep, Gwen, we'll make that happen. We'll give him an award. Okay. Listen, everybody, you're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. You can find us at the letter B, liftedupradio.com, or as part of the Mocha Podcast Network.com. That's podcast, plural, Mocha Podcast Network. You can find us on all social platforms, especially IG, YouTube, under B, again, the letter B, Lifted Up Radio. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. I'm here with my guest host, Pam Perry. We love you, and we'll see you next time.